This is Chapter 8 of The Wrong 10 Seconds. The dog Charlie chased off has been found, and no one knows he was responsible. Here's Phoebe and what the latest developments mean for her. Chapter 8, Phoebe, Saturday night. Look who it is. Phoebe's dad greeted her from the kitchen table, looking up from his auto parts catalogue. Wasn't sure we'd ever see you again. Decided we're good enough for you after all? Phoebe's mum was stacking plates and corralling bottles of cola and lemonade and beer. Phoebe sidled to her at the counter, chewing her hoodie string. I just didn't want to go out today. Don't be mad. Her dad shook his head. You'll go even paler. They had good sales at the mall, her mum told her. Kaylee got new shoes and we both found tops. Got our nails done. She flashed her fingernails, which had tiny ladybird pictures stamped on. My cuticles were getting well out of hand. Yeah, teased Dad. They was really putting me off. Glad you spent my money sorting those out. Mum aimed a kick at his chair. It's my money, you prick. I got my wages too. None of it gets very far, do it? 'Cause we got 3 bloody kids. Mum jerked her head at Phoebe. Least this one's cheap to keep, seeing as you don't want to go anywhere and just wear the same sodding hoodie all the time. Phoebe shrugged and let her hands out of her hoodie sleeves. Her fingers were stained red from her current art project. Over the last 3 days, her Facebook wall had filled with angry posts from Shiana and, it seemed, their entire year group at school. She couldn't face leaving the house and risk meeting anyone, feeling their glares singe her and their tongues whip her ears. So Phoebe hid away and designed her own wall, modelling each page of her notebook red with oil pastels or watercolours, sometimes spotting the page with tiny ink dots like pores. She taped the pages over her walls, covering all the pictures she'd put up before, forcing her box room to reflect what she felt, trapped, bricked in. Even at the best of times, did she have best of times? She couldn't remember anymore. Good times seemed as impossible as oases in the desert. Even then, Phoebe didn't enjoy the shopping mall. It could be completely empty apart from her family, but Kaylee alone would make more noise and fuss than Phoebe wanted to handle. Now Phoebe had finished her project. Her parents' distracting chatter was helpful, diverting her mind down a different track. Who do you think decided cuticles were bad? She pondered. People must have had them for all of time without doing anything about it. There has to be a reason for cuticles, right? She studied hers. They had a slim, elliptical shape like flying saucers. Oh, bloody hell, here we go. Mum tapped Phoebe's head with one of the plates. You need to get out the house more, love, agreed Dad, scratching his thinning ginger hair. He was responsible for Phoebe's disastrous looks, although he wasn't as pale, thanks to the permanent layer of grime from the garage he owned. What's for tea? Phoebe asked. Owen and his lads are bringing pizza round with them after practice, but I expect they'll eat it all. Bought some cheese rolls at Fairford's for the rest of us. Dad tossed a paper bag at her. Fumbling her catch, Phoebe asked, You wear navy blue to work at Fairford's, right? And they sell lots of seeds you can make healthy biscuits with? Is this about that dog thing? Mum reached for a bag of crisps in an upper cupboard, and the packets shimmered down in a crinkling avalanche. Everyone hates me for it. Phoebe stared down at her roll and imagined shrinking enough to rest in one of its soft, dough-cushioned air bubbles. The way you go on about them, I thought they hated you already, Dad chuckled, and it was his turn to get a whack on the head from Mum, this time with a bag of quavers. Tom Ryburn says I won't make it out of the first PE lesson alive. He'd rung her last night. Then his girlfriend, Lily, rang Phoebe and said she would steal acid from the chemistry labs and they'd pour it over Phoebe in the toilets. They rang her up to say these things because then Phoebe had no record. Only insults were texted or posted, not threats. These people weren't stupid. You never saw them getting into situations where they had to pretend to eat dog poo. Ignore 'em. Mum finished laying everything out for Owen and his mates. She leaned against the counter, got her phone out of her pocket, and examined it with arms partly folded. They'll be over it once school starts, especially now they've found the bloody dog anyway. What? Phoebe froze on her way to grab a soda. Mum looked up from her phone. They had the dog back this morning. There was pictures. Thought you had Facebook, huh? Why were the angry texts still arriving then? Phoebe hadn't been brave enough to check Facebook today, but the "we all hate you" texts never stopped. Clearly, they never would stop. I didn't take that dog. It wasn't anything to do with me. You believe me, right? Christ, what does it matter? Pass me another beer, would you? Dad reached toward her. Phoebe's hands shook too much to move. I hate that they hate me. I didn't do anything wrong. Dad snapped his fingers for his beer until Mum looked up again and passed him one. Can't you give me a moment's peace, either of you? She sighed and turned to Phoebe. You got two choices, love. Win them all over or don't let it get to you. Work it out. How do I do that, though? Either of those things. Dad's beer top clicked off with a hiss. You stop thinking and just bloody do it, love. Yeah, said Mum. Either stop faffing around with your paints in your room, get out and stand up for yourself, or don't come out at all, look. Phoebe knew her parents were right. She watched her mum's cuticle-free fingers navigate through Candy Crush on her phone. They were all so smart in her family, not at school particularly, but at knowing how to get through things. Phoebe sipped her soda. She wondered what Miss Shelley would say, but Miss Shelley was gone. Owen and 4 of his mates came, carrying boxes of half-eaten pizzas. They clattered in from the street, voices swaying, pitching, like ships drunk off stormy seas. Inside the kitchen, they buffeted each other for the first snatch of the crisps and drinks. Beer caps flew, pizza slices dangled like blood-stained bunting. Phoebe listened to them speak the language of tries, scrums, and pints with her dad. Mum, after setting up the generous spread, now stood her ground, smacking anyone who jostled her elbows while she carried on with Candy Crush. Hey, sis, Owen called, noticing Phoebe despite her attempts to melt into the corridor as she watched. One of his friends spun round, smiling sloppily. This the sister who tried to get rid of Shiana Harrow's dog? You're brave, another laughed, crossing that little blonde bitch. Course she's bloody brave, shouted Owen. She's my sister, ain't she? All us tailors are hard as rocks, right, Dad? Mum? I'll give you a hard slap to prove it if you don't clear out my kitchen, Mum snapped, while Dad grinned around his beer. With a roar like a crashing wave, the lads swept past Phoebe, following Owen up the corridor to the lounge, bellowing over who would use the Xbox controllers first. Dad went back to flipping through his catalogue. Mum stayed absorbed in Candy Crush. Phoebe ducked into her room. She'd never heard anyone badmouth Shiana before. Teachers didn't notice her unpleasantness. Students either imitated or submitted to it. Maybe the fact Phoebe picked up on it made her smart, not weird. You've got your dog back now, Phoebe texted Shiana, so call off your hounds. Shaking, she pressed send. Fighting back never seemed to work. This time she'd make sure it did. Phoebe tightened her hoodie strings and headed for the door. Don't worry, I'm just getting fresh air and exercise. I won't find things to faff around painting. Her parents didn't glance up. Phoebe's mind crawled with unease. Did her parents really care if she stood up for herself, or did they just want her to shut up about her problems? Don't think like that. She broke into a jog to escape the single working street lamp on their road. They're my parents, they have to care. Stop thinking, start doing. Walking at night was the best. The absence of colour clarified texture, each pulsing leaf vein and every gnarled stone thrown into sharp relief. On quiet nights, Phoebe pretended she was walking on the moon. Once she crept from the estate, hurrying past scrawny young parents smoking in their tiny gardens. There were trees, their leaves shuddering in the breeze. The lampposts worked here, and the blue light of widescreen TVs glowed through people's curtains, abstract sculptures or vases of flowers sometimes silhouetted in the windows. A cat sashayed along the top of a fence. It had a tubby, low-hanging stomach, but tiptoed with confidence. Phoebe wondered if she could draw it, recreate its unlikely grace, and was reaching for her phone before she stopped herself. Her parents had a point. What had spending all her time on art got her so far? Avoiding the crowds around the Weatherspoons and the Chippy, Phoebe followed a side street to a little park. She'd drawn the neglected nighttime skeletons of the swings and slide before. Tonight, the park wasn't empty. Phoebe drew back quickly, lining up with its bordering hedge. 2 meters away, a couple sat on the spinning saucer, their dangling feet anchoring them, but rocking gently. Phoebe peeked out. Their backs were to her. They weren't kids, and they didn't have beer cans or fags or anything. Just a man and a woman, tired, their heads leaning in together like Phoebe's parents sometimes did when they watched TV. "At least it's over now," the woman said. "She's home and everyone's happy." This sounded like a question. "I'm not sure they're exactly placated, but I suppose they never are. It's fed their addiction to the limelight. Deb's already lobbying for a follow-up article in The Citizen." The man sighed. "I should take time off. Get them out on holiday. They keep saying they want that." "Always nice to get away." The woman sounded sad. "Maybe I could send them off by themselves. How do you think they'd take it?" Phoebe jumped as her phone vibrated, mooing softly in her pocket. She slipped behind the bush again and read a text from Shiana. "If you think I'm going to forget what you did, you are seriously even stupider than I thought." On the other side of the hedge, the woman teased, "And what would you do while they were away?" "There's this pretty girl I thought I might stay with." Phoebe clutched the phone, crouching down to feel less shaky. She peered into the park through the iron loops of the fence. Shiana's dad and his girlfriend tapped their feet, slowly turning the saucer. They were coming round to face her. She checked her camera settings. No flash. Hopefully the streetlight would be enough. Zooming in slightly, they had turned her way. Phoebe got a photo of them with one tap of the screen. They were too busy kissing to notice. That's the end of chapter 8. I'll have chapter 9 up for you also today, so keep listening. Thanks.